Hi friends, no matter what time of day it is, I hope that you're having a wonderful day. In today's video, we are going to be reading through the Chronicle jump doc. Chronicle is a 2012 movie that was a found footage superhero film about a trio of teenagers who got superpowers after encountering a strange substance inside of a cave right outside, or rather not too far, from a party they were attending. This is a very popular jump doc. It is a fairly popular first jump. It is one of the safer alternatives to the generic first jump or the Pokemon trainer jump, which are two of the more common first jumps, and the Pokemon trainer jump is itself the traditional first jump. That said, in today's video, we are going to be looking through the documents. It is not exceptionally long. It is worth noting that this is going to constitute a spoiler warning for the film. I do not know how much of the film I'm going to explicitly discuss or how much of its planned sequel I'm going to discuss. It is worth noting that you can find most of the movie online without searching that hard, and you can find the script for the sequel online for anyone who would like to read that. The sequel is obviously almost certainly never going to happen unless a different showrunner, unless a different movie runner takes it over for reasons that relate to the actions of the original movie writer, Max Landis. I am not going to delve into all of that. Just know that if you decide to Google that, be warned, Max Landis is a human being, and I do not mean that in a way that excuses any of his actions. You are going to read some not great stuff if you go and read about him. That said, this movie is a fun movie and it is a fairly popular jump doc, so I wanted to go ahead and talk about it. It is also a jump doc that I myself have used. I am obviously not the author. I am not Anon 303, but you can now see all of the usual stuff at the beginning of a jump doc. You can see the 1,000 choice points. You can see the starting location. It's Seattle, the American city in the state of Washington. It's just a normal American city. This is not a very supernatural setting. There are supernatural things that exist in it. In addition to the teenagers, if you decide to delve truly into the plot and intended lore as the creator of this setting envisioned it. But supernatural stuff is not very common. In fact, it is extremely rare. So it is entirely possible that if you decide to only focus on the movie itself, and once the events of the movie are over, the rest of the setting is freeform, it is entirely possible that that is the only supernatural stuff that you would encounter, unless you took a perk in here or you took a drawback in here. All right, so we're going to go ahead and dive on into the origins. There's 4 origins. It's also worth noting you can freely choose your age and gender as long as you could still conceivably attend high school. So you're going to be on the younger side at the start of this jump, but as usual, the default time period is 10 years. So you are going to start off as, at the very youngest, probably a 13 or 14-year-old, and at the very oldest, an 18 or 19-year-old, maybe, probably a 17 or 18-year-old, and thus you are going to end somewhere in your early to late 20s, assuming you only stay here for a decade and you don't take an extended stay drawback, or you don't take something that makes you leave the second the plot is finished. There are 4 origins. 3 of them correspond to the protagonists of the movie, and one of them is a drop-in. The drop-in origin is just called the drop-in origin. You just show up one day somewhere in Seattle, a jumper with no past. You lack a history, but you still have any credentials and documents you need. You have the keys to a well-furnished house and enough money to get by for a few months in your pocket. No one is sure if those things existed before today, but you won't have to answer any odd questions through, I suppose, fiat backing of your house and all of those kinds of things. It's worth noting noting that unless you take a specific item, stuff like your house will not follow you into future jumps. But at the very least, for the decade that you are living here, that is a thing that will exist. It does not have any true fiat backing. It does not have any sort of guarantees on it that it won't be damaged. It's not self-repairing. But there is a specific item in this setting that you could purchase that does have all of those stuff and will follow you along your chain. We'll talk about it later. Awkward High Schooler is the origin related to Andrew, who is one of the three characters. And it reflects his not spectacular family background. And the perks are superpower based for the most part. So if you want to focus on the superpowers that you'll be getting as a result of this jump, either the drop-in origin or the Awkward High Schooler origin are the two origins that you would want to pick. Social origin relates to another of the three characters. His name is Steve. This makes it so that you are just a remarkably gregarious, friendly, social, and popular figure. And it gives you perks that relate to and boost that kind of thing. If you want your jumper to both have powers and also to be capable of getting by without using those powers, this is probably the best origin for you. The mostly average guy origin relates to Matt, who is the final of the three main characters. He is buddies with Steve at the start of the movie, and he is Andrew's cousin. It is in fact some of his actions which are some of the precipitating causes of this particular movie as it plays out on screen. This is the origin for if you want to be a good person and if you want to be capable of helping others the most, rather than relying on your charisma or using your superpowers. But it is worth noting that all three of these characters and you, as long as you take the powers perk, which you can already see and is free, will have powers no matter what, unless you intervene while the plot of the movie is playing out and radically change it. Because even though your powers are fiat backed and you could get them without going and seeing the crystal which gives the others their powers, the others are not innately powered like you might be, so you could still radically change the course of events of this particular setting simply by going and preventing them from finding the crystal. So now we're going to go ahead and jump into the perks. The first free perk, which is free for everyone, is this setting's version of telekinesis. It's worth noting that this version of telekinesis is a lot more free form than traditional telekinesis is. It is not solely you can move things with your mind, although that is a big part of it. It gives you the ability to do other things as you develop and train it, but it does require training. Among other things, you can use it to fly, and you can use it to exert forces on things rather than just lifting them up or down. You can conceivably form force fields. That is something that is shown in the movie. For people who are curious, but you do have to train it, and there is, in fact, as far as I remember, no perk that actually makes it so that you can train your powers more easily, although there is a perk that makes it so that your powers are no longer limited, and not just this one, but all of your powers. So long as you train them, you will be able to use them in a wide range of ways, and you will not face arbitrary limits, even though obviously the stronger they are, the harder and the longer and the more unique ways you would have to find to train them. There is a plot device here if you do not want to start out with the perk. If you do not want to start out with the telekinesis but still have it fiat backed, there is a way to do that. You could still opt to gain the powers from the strange crystal. That would not remove their fiat backed nature for you, especially moving forward into other things in your chain. So if you still like the plot of the movie and you want to see it play out mostly as intended, perhaps changing a few things along the way, you could still do that while having access to your powers. All right, A Lonely Fortress makes it so that you have a new way of dealing with your problems. Rather than feeling the full weight of your problems on your shoulders at all time, you are a skilled compartmentalizer. This does not cause the problems to go away. If you want to resolve them, you will still have to resolve them. But if you are worried about things being too overwhelming for for you, you could still take this perk. You would gain fiat-backed skill at compartmentalizing and being able to focus on one thing at a time, which can be an important part of dealing with your problems. The lion does not feel guilty when it kills the gazelle, allows you to dictate the terms of your own morality without having to go through long periods of learning and changing, and also makes it so that when you stick to that morality that you've decided for yourself, you gain an immense amount of determination and willpower, and are able to more effectively deal with your problems and do whatever it is you think you need to do. Who Wants to Be Mundane is a luck booster when it comes to encountering supernatural and fantastical stuff. Even in seemingly normal worlds, there will be things that you can find. This does probably put in things that are supernatural to some extent into otherwise completely mundane worlds. This also boosts your luck when it comes to encountering things like that. Potentially very fun perk if you plan to go to normal settings, but you don't want your jumper to just have places to hone their powers willy-nilly, because if you have fiat backing for your powers, they're going to stick with you. So if you are a werewolf dragon demigod and you have fiat backing for that, if you go to another setting, say you go to the world of Desperate Housewives where there are no supernatural elements, you will normally have just a decade to be in that setting and to just hone your powers and train them however you wished. But if you don't like that, if you want there to be more supernatural elements, this perk will put them in there for you, so don't worry about that. Lifting yourself up is an uncapper when it comes to your supernatural abilities. It makes it so that all of the abilities that you possess that are fiat backed are no longer limited. There are many perks that have a hard limit, a maximum place to which you can train them, and then after that point, training simply does not work, so you might as well do it aside from to prevent your skills from degrading with those particular abilities. This perk gets rid of that. Uncappers are always very strong, very good perks to have. It's a shame that this one is so expensive, but it makes sense that it's a capstone. Drop in, you're going to start off with Magnetic Personality. Magnetic Personality is the free perk for drop-ins, and the way Magnetic Personality works is that you are far more able to become friends with people who have things in common with you, whether it is you being one person who has special powers and them being other people who have special powers, or you being a jock and them being jocks. You are far more likely to be able to be friends with them and thus to always have homies. Secrecy insurance makes it so that people are far more likely to rationalize your powers. It also makes it so that you will never be harmed as a result of your powers being revealed. So if you are in a desperate situation where you have been hiding the fact that you have magic and you are forced to use your magic to defend yourself, but you are surrounded by people who hate magic, this perk will allow you to more easily get away from that situation, even when people realize that you are a magic user. It will not stop them from disliking the fact that you have magic, but it will make it easier for you to get away from that situation in some capacity. Still Human is a perk that makes you incorruptible externally. So if there's some sort of possessing force or some sort of aspect to your powers, perhaps they're linked to an evil patron or something that should cause them to corrupt you over time, that won't work. This does not make you incorruptible internally. If you decide that you would like to be evil, you could still be evil. It just makes it so that a possessed artifact or something like that will not be the cause for your descent into darkness. Your descent into darkness has got to be on you. Supernatural Savant makes it so that you I was kind of mistaken. This is kind of a training booster for your supernatural abilities, but it's rudimentary, and its most purposeful impact is that it gives you creativity for using your powers. It makes it so that you're able to more effectively experiment with and discover new uses for your supernatural abilities. It's a very handy ability, and it makes it so that you are just far more dynamic when it comes to your powers. Telekinesis at a high enough level is kind of a form of baby reality warping. And with this perk, if you train it hard enough, you will begin to see aspects of that. This is something that makes you very, very, very good at using your supernatural abilities. If you want to be a superpower based jumper and you want that to be your primary gimmick, this is an indispensable perk for that kind of thing. Awkward High Schooler starts off with main character morality. Main character morality is interesting because despite the name, it is not internal, it is external. Main character morality makes it so that your friends and people who've gotten along with you in the past, when they interact with you, they will keep in mind the good times that they've had with you, and they'll be more forgiving of your personality quirks and your personality flaws. So that's something that is very handy. Even bad guys need sleep makes it so that you are effectively not able to be hurt while you are sleeping. This does not mean that bad things cannot happen to you in some capacity. It just means that when you go to sleep, you can rest assured that unless someone has some sort of means of overcoming your perks explicitly, they will not be able to destroy you in your sleep, at least not in a physical sense. If someone wants to tie you up or otherwise do something that would make it harder for you to do stuff when you are awake, that is fair game. But doing something like stabbing you or something like that is not a thing that they would be able to do, at least not while you were asleep. They would have to wake you up in order to do that. With great power comes great leisure is a perk that makes it so that you no longer need to focus on your abilities to keep them active. If you have a force field that only works if you focus on it, you no longer need to focus on it. If your flight is concentration based, you no longer need to worry about that. It was worth noting that this does not stop powers from drawing on your internal energy resources. So if you are capable of flying, but the flight spell itself consumes magical energy or consumes a sort of reservoir of mental energy as you are using it, that will still be depleted, but you no longer need to worry about someone punching you in the face and that breaking your hold over your ability or something like that. Very handy. Misery Loves Company is the capstone for the Awkward High Schooler origin, and this makes it so that the negative effects of things like enemy attacks are less noticeable to you, and the more pain / the worse off you are, the more powered you become. So if you have a sort of telekinesis where at most you can toss a baseball around with your mind, if you are injured enough, you would potentially be able to do things like rip a tree in half or deflect bullets using your telekinesis. Now, obviously, this is not perfect. This does not stop enemies from killing you, but this simply makes it so that your attacks are more effective and you are able to shrug off pain more effectively. This is in many ways a berserker style perk. It's worth noting that this is potentially very strong in the right hands if you are someone who has low defense but high amounts of health and you regularly take attacks but you have some sort of factor that keeps you in the fight. This could potentially be a very strong perk. It's also worth noting that this could potentially be dangerous because in the wrong hands, this could cause people to become overconfident and to think that they could either recover from a situation they couldn't or something like that. You do need to keep that in mind when you were deciding how this would affect how your jumper fights. Social Butterfly, which is Steve's origin, begins with Jihad 101. This is the free perk for this origin. Humans are social creatures by nature. This makes it so that you are fit in any social situation. You are a perfect 10 out of 10 physically. You have a natural intuition when it comes to dealing with social situations and how to navigate them successfully, and you have a noticeable presence. This is a very strong perk for social jumpers. It is also a perk that I recommend that anyone takes. Social skills / attractiveness perks are extremely powerful, and it is easy to underestimate how good they are if your jumper is not a social jumper or if you yourself don't often do social situations. But very good. Setting priorities is a Casanova perk. That is all you really need to hear about it. Also, it makes it so that you are able to use your powers in adult situations and in adult ways effectively. This is still a very good perk to have. It's just not something that we need to be talking about on this channel right now. I just do my best at everything as a motivation booster, which can be incredibly handy in a lot of different scenarios. A lot of very strong jumps for jumpers at the beginning of their chains are jumps like Chronicle and Twilight, and it is easy to go to settings where you are, for example, stuck in high school or stuck in college, at least at the beginning, and not have the motivation to do things. But with a perk like this, you are far more easily able to get over that hump, and you are able to excel, and you're able to effectively live a life that a jumper deserves to live because of the power of motivation and will boosters. If you want to be able to apply for a scholarship, if you want to be good at studying, if you want to get good grades, willpower motivation boosters are fantastic, and this sort of perk ages very effectively, especially when it starts to get when a jumper starts to reach higher end jumps, where even though perks give them access to cool abilities, perks still need to be trained up. This motivation booster is also helpful for things like that, and that is very important because motivation is not ever a thing motivation will never not be important. The game of life is effectively a direct upgrade to the Chad 101 perk. It makes it so that you possess an almost supernatural natural charisma, and you are capable of converting people to your cause, whatever that is. You know how to adopt yourself and how to handle yourself to persuade your audience, whether it is a single person or a large group of people. It is worth noting that not every situation will be something that you can handle with telekinesis, or even with mind reading. Sometimes the real key to succeeding in a situation is just having charisma, is just being a master of platonic riz, so to speak. So this sort of perk is incredibly handy. I highly recommend it. I think in a lot of ways this might actually be the best capstone in the whole jump. But then again, I tend to make charisma based jumpers, especially because once a jumper hits a certain level of power, they can immediately enter a jump, one shot all of the deities, and then be bored if they are not doing things that involve their superpowers. So oftentimes giving your jumper some sort of gimmick, whether it is extremely high charisma or something like that, is very helpful for keeping jumps entertaining. Mostly Average Guy is Matt's origin, and with Mostly Average Guy, you start off with Sidekick Stupidity. Sidekick Stupidity, despite the name, is not a drawback. It's actually a very good perk that makes it so that you're able to approach situations logically, rationally, and level-headed. Even if you are internally terrified, you are capable of hiding that and reacting to a situation as you would if you were fully brave or anything like that. That one guy in Freshman Philosophy, which is the next perk in this origin, is a perk that makes it so that you are very good at philosophy. You have philosophical quotes for any situation, and you have the mental flexibility and adaptability to be able to react to a wide range of situations and to be able to look at situations from every possible angle. This is a surprisingly powerful perk, although it is easy to discount. A Helpful Hand is one of the best good guy perks that I've ever seen in a jump that I recommend people take early. It makes it so that you are a sort of natural preventative care measure. You can recognize if people are in trouble or have any sorts of problems. You're able to talk to people as a friend without being turned away. Your friends will find it surprisingly easy to open up to you, and even just talking to you and spending time with you is enough to immediately alleviate some level of their problems. And it also alleviates the pressure that their problems put on them. The contents of these conversations doesn't actually matter, and this will lighten the impact of things outside of their control. So this is an extremely strong perk, and in the right hands, an early enough jumper who goes to a wide range of different settings where villains start off as either heroes or start off as people in need of help can become the help that those people need. This can honestly be incredibly transformative. Someone with a version of a perk like this can go into Warhammer 40k and talk to Horus and some of the other corrupted Primarchs, and if they are skillful enough and if they are persistent enough, they could even theoretically prevent some of the Primarchs from being corrupted and turning to chaos. They could also do this, and they could interact with a wide range of other fallen heroes such as Anakin Skywalker, and if they get there early enough and if they talk to them early enough, they could prevent them from becoming villains. This is a perk that can easily transform entire settings if it is taken, if it is remembered, and if it is used properly. I Get Knocked Down Again is a surprisingly powerful capstone perk that makes it so that you are able to learn from your mistakes. It makes it so that you are able to get back up again, and it's effectively a second chance perk. It's nothing as strong as a 1-up or anything like that. If you die, you still die, but you are capable of learning from your mistakes, adapting to them, and knowing not to make them again in the future. And that can be incredibly powerful in the right settings, especially if you visit enough safe settings where you can make minor mistakes without it potentially ending your chain, to learn from a wide range of mistakes and to get better at identifying potential mistakes before they happen. We are now going to talk about some of the items. The found footage film is a free item, which is found footage of all of your past adventures. If your jumper has been to 1,000 jumps in the past before they hit this one, they would still find footage of all of their adventures from every angle and all sorts of cool stuff in their warehouse, presumably either in their warehouse or like in their actual house. Comfortable Silence is a powerful no attention item that makes it so that when you wear it, as long as you are not going out of your way to seek attention, people will not notice you. If you decide that you want to go to a library and study, but you are a celebrity or something, people would not notice you if you were wearing this. I imagine that there are some simple limits on this. I imagine that if you were wanted and someone in law enforcement was actively looking for you and they had your description and they saw you, I imagine that this would not shield you from that. There's also a limitation described. There's a limitation described here as well. This only works as long as you don't do anything too attention grabbing, so you can't rob a bank unhindered with this. Just simple stuff like that. Obviously, you should be able to read those sorts of limits and think about how that would apply for your jumper if they were doing something. But if your jumper simply wanted to walk over to a library and study, or if they simply wanted to go to a restaurant and get some food without being bothered, obviously this item would probably be able to allow them to do that, barring bizarre external circumstances. The next item is a camera. It is a fiat-backed camera. It is able to record anything and everything supernatural, even if it wouldn't normally be visible or noticeable at all. It is truly indestructible. It is a very solid item if you are someone who likes doing some sort of mystery solving, or if you're just someone who likes filming your escapades and stuff as you go on them. Very handy. A holiday home is a gigantic mansion. I talked earlier about how if you were a drop-in, your house wouldn't be fiat backed. If you take this item, your house does become fiat backed. You now have a mansion that you live in that is always clean and dust free, self-repairing. It is massive. It has a massive garden. It's effectively just a really rad house that follows you for the rest of your chain. This is very handy if you decide that your jumper wants to have a few jumps where they live as a normal person in a setting, maybe behaving in ways that are in line with their particular philosophy or something like that, but otherwise not really going out of their way to radically transform a setting. This is a great house for them because they won't have to worry about potentially being unhoused or their house being destroyed because the house would be self-repairing, and obviously follows you for the rest of your chain. Very cool. One concern less is a money item. This is a nebulous conceptual wealth item that does have a hard but high limit. You can't do anything as ridiculous as buying a country or buying a planet, but anything below that you can do. This is one of the best items if you do want to get rid of money stuff, but it is worth noting that this is a capstone item and the items in this jump are not discounted, so you would have to spend almost half of your budget on it if you decided that this was how you wanted to address money concerns from here on out. So just keep that in mind. A strange cave effectively allows you to give anyone you want the free powers perk. It gives you ownership over the hole where the crystal was found that gives the main characters their powers at the start of the movie and makes it so that you can move the cave wherever you want. Obviously, this could be a warehouse attachment if you wanted, but you could also just make it appear in a setting. I've been trying to film this video over the course of the last couple of days, and an example that I gave in the past was if you go from this jump to Super Mario Sunshine and you decide that you want to give Princess Peach the ability to use this version of telekinesis, you could just move the cave to be somewhere in Isle Delfino, or you could just invite her to your warehouse for a few minutes. You could show her the crystal, boom, she's got the powers and she could use them from here on out. Although obviously she wouldn't necessarily have any of the other powers that make training easier or faster, so she would need to train the powers herself. Just keep that in mind. We are now in the companion section. You can grab someone from the setting to take with you. If you decided that you wanted to take Andrew or Matt or Steve, the main characters, with you, you could spend some choice points and you would be able to convince them to come along with you. It's worth noting that most of the time they do have to survive. Not every single jump has this stipulation, and in fact there's some jumps that very specifically don't, because sometimes the characters are already dead by the time you start the jump and there's no way for you to save them, but they still interact in the story in some meaningful capacity, so you can still find a way to bring them along. But obviously, in this particular setting, you probably do want them to survive to the end of the jump, which is not super difficult as long as you intervene in the plot. If you intervene in the plot very early, you could potentially stop any of the characters from getting powers, which would radically transform the setting and would effectively make it so that you are just in a mundane world, at least so long as you intervene and you do something about the cave very quickly to keep people from getting to it. And you don't take the right drawback, because if you take the right drawback, you are definitely going to encounter supernatural stuff in this, and it will not be your friend. We are now going to go to the drawback section. I'm not going to read through these. It's worth noting that I'm going to go ahead and stop right here, because if I go any further, we're going to start to see plot drawbacks that would radically transform the setting. The setting as it was envisioned by the screenwriter and the setting as it occurs in the film are different, because there were plans for extra movies that never happened, and that will in all likelihood probably never happen for a number of real life reasons. So if you view authorial intent, and if you take the statements that have been made by the people from this film as canon, at least the ones that are relevant to the plot of this, then you will know extra things that affect both your thoughts on the powers and the origin of the powers, as the movie by itself stipulates and seems to suggest. The powers are just a strange result of an odd crystal that some kids found in a cave. If you look at the expanded universe as it was intended to be by the screenwriter, that is not the case. So if you want to think about that, you definitely can. I normally would show the end of the document. I'm not going to in this particular video. There are notes that are spoilers that talk about the plans for the development of Chronicle 2. You can find the script for Chronicle 2 online. I am going to be putting the link to this jump doc in the video description description, so anyone who wants to see it definitely can. In fact, I encourage you to. It is very helpful for thinking about how this form of telekinesis would develop. I just don't want to be the spoiler for you any more than I've already spoiled the handful of things I've spoiled over the course of this video. That said, this is a very strong potential first jump. It is not exceptionally dangerous so long as you do not take the right drawbacks. If you want to experience the full danger of this expanded universe as it was intended to be, I strongly recommend you do take the drawbacks. The drawbacks are a lot of fun, they're very interesting, but they do make the setting more dangerous. So obviously, if you are going to be adventuring here, you do need to be cognizant of that, and that's fine. This is a great first jump for a number of different types of jumpers. If you are a hero jumper, or if you want to be a hero jumper, I recommend that you take Matt's origin, which is the mostly average high schooler origin. That is a very, very, very good origin for hero jumpers and for jumpers who want to make places better, as I've talked about. It is easy to discount that origin because at a glance it probably doesn't seem as interesting as the other three origins. If you want to be a superhero based jumper, or at least a super based jumper, I think the best origin is probably the drop-in, followed immediately thereafter by the awkward high schooler. Both of those origins have power-based perks, and both of them age very well. Misery Loves Company is a fantastic last-ditch perk for if your jumper is in a precarious situation and needs to survive. Supernatural Savant is a fantastic perk for ratcheting up your level of power. I will personally say that there is a final battle for this particular film that you can find on YouTube extremely easily. Literally just look up Chronicle Final Battle. The feats that are shown in that particular battle by one of the characters are not feats that that character is normally capable of. That character is being affected by outside context things that you do not see just looking at the battle itself that allow them to manifest their powers more strongly. So you should keep that in mind. But my personal ruling is you can definitely do at least that level of stuff if you spend your decade in this setting actually training and using your powers. I'm not going to say that that's how everyone would rule the scaling of this sort of telekinesis. It's also worth noting that there is no hard limit that I have ever found anywhere, even using the expanded statements by the movie screenwriter and by the cast and crew from the film. So it is not clear what the upper limit would be. I think that people can reasonably fan wank that it would be a lot of different things. I think that if you say that the upper limit is probably enough to destroy a building, I feel like that would probably make sense if you want to try to keep things down, but it's worth remembering that there's a perk in this very jump that would uncap that, so that means that eventually with enough training you could feasibly see the telekinesis that someone gets for free from this jump if they had centuries to train it, or years with the right sorts of perks. It could reasonably be sort of cosmic level telekinesis, because that's what uncappers do. Uncappers, by their very definition, make it so that things that seem to have hard limits basically don't anymore, and that's super cool. That is going to be it for me in this particular video. I hope that you guys have had as much fun as I have. I strongly recommend people check out this jump doc. If you do not want to watch the movie, you definitely don't need to. Basically, all you really need to know is that 3 teenagers get superpowers, and they proceed to use their superpowers in the ways that you would think teenagers with their backgrounds would. For better or for worse, teenagers be teenagers, And this is a fun superhero movie about some kids using their powers to discover new aspects of who they really are, and also using their powers and being changed by their powers. There's nothing like creepy or cosmic. Their powers don't corrupt them. Their powers just allow them to express themselves in ways that they previously couldn't. Very fun first jump. I strongly recommend visiting it very early, because I think that if you visit this as a first or as a second jump, I think that's what allows it to be the most effective. That's when your jumper is the sort of most flexible and they have not yet decided on any of their major stuff. So just keep that in mind moving forward. Have a great day, everyone.